Welcome back to Strictly Money. If you sat across someone who said they were a financial advisor, what would you understand that they were qualified to do? You see, the term financial advisor is vague at best. Some have had rigorous training and have fiduciary duty. Others are there to simply sell you a product and don't need to understand anything about you. And this is exactly why a group of consumer advocates are taking aim at the Ontario government's move to regulate such titles, claiming they've set the bar too low. John Paul Bureau is one of those advocates and is executive director at Fair Canada, and he joins me now. Hi, Jean Paul. Great to have you on.
Hi, Saijal. Thank you for having me.
So you were quoted as saying we are disappointed with Ontario's approach to approving credentials for financial advisors. Tell us why.
Well, I think you framed the issue very well in your opening comment. This was an opportunity to actually raise the bar and have people who are in the financial services industry that like to hold themselves out as financial advisors actually meet higher standards that are meeting the expectations of consumers. So the problem is there are a lot of people in the financial services who actually are licensed to sell you a product, not necessarily to provide you with comprehensive financial advice. So we're disappointed that in the process of protecting this title, the government and the regulators didn't do more to protect consumers.
Yeah, so let's talk about this process then, Jean Paul, because earlier this year, my understanding is Ontario's finance ministry approved the financial professionals title protection rule. So, what happened between then and now that's still leading to this gap?
Well, there are a number of issues with the enabling legislation and the rules, but the issue that's happened since is that um, FISRA, which is the regulatory agency that's empowered to designate or approve organizations that run these programs. So individuals have to take these programs to be able to use the titles.
Hmm.
The main issue is that the organizations that have been approved uh, to have their titles used are really not that different than what exists today in terms of those who are out there providing different types of sales advice on different types of products. So it was a missed opportunity to actually get bodies in there or organizations in there that held their members to much higher standards.
So, what would you have liked to have seen?
Well, I would have liked to have seen more clarity as to what exactly is a financial advisor and creating some uh, agreed upon standards that are higher and different than somebody, for example, who's licensed to sell you a mutual fund. So, where we're at today is the distinction between somebody who is a financial advisor in Ontario and somebody who's only licensed to sell you a mutual fund is not that different. So, we would have liked to see a greater distinction between the role of a financial advisor, the competency, the educational requirements, the knowledge and the experience requirements to be quite different than somebody who's simply licensed to sell you one type of product.
Yeah, it's interesting because you would think, couldn't they come up with another title? I don't know if it's financial salesperson. If all that person is doing is in a position is selling and is not in a position to advise.
Yeah, I think using the title salesperson for those people that are truly salespeople, I think that would be a step in the right direction. The industry, unfortunately, has resisted attempts to use that label. Um, it's a difficult challenge. I think the biggest thing should be to try to raise the proficiency requirements on the individuals that hold themselves out as providing financial advice. And as you noted, that suggests they're giving you comprehensive advice about a range of different products, a range of different financial strategies, not just trying to sell you one product.
It's so interesting though, Jean Paul, because it just feels like they're not putting themselves in the position of Canadians who for the most part, are not financially literate. I hear this all the time that they go to a bank and they're like, oh, my financial advisor said this. And I'm like, are they a financial advisor or are they not? And honestly, they don't have a clue. So I'm glad we're having this important discussion. We're going to take a quick break and we'll continue this when we come back. Welcome back. We've been talking about the term financial advisor and who's qualified as one technically and who isn't, because we know the range is quite broad. Jean-Paul, I'm curious to know, are people in the industry being vocal about this and how are they feeling about it?
It's a great question, and it's important to know that there are a lot of people in the industry that are disappointed as well. It's not just consumer advocates. I think there are those in the industry that really um, care and focus on the client's needs, and they're working very hard to kind of professionalize the industry and provide the best quality advice they can to meet their clients' expectations. So there are quite a few people in the industry that are also disappointed.
Yeah, I think that's the point, right? Because one bad apple, and sometimes it everyone else gets lumped in, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and it's like most businesses, you can either try to have a race to the top and increase the proficiency and the qualifications, or a race to the bottom. And I think those that really care about their clients are concerned that this may turn into a race to the bottom.
Hmm. Now, I know you and your fellow advocates believe that if provinces want a standard for financial planners, they should look to Quebec. Why?
Well, Quebec took a different approach, and there are a number of important differences. So, for example, in Quebec, there is only one body that can grant you that title. So in Ontario now, we have, I think, four different organizations that can grant, I think, eight different titles or nine
Wow.
different titles. So there's a greater streamlined process in Quebec. The other big difference is Quebec recognized that between financial planning and financial advising, the only recognized or the only title that actually has recognized global standards is financial planning. And so they limit their title protection rules to financial planners only. There is no agreed upon definition or standard or qualification of what makes a financial advisor. In fact, Quebec, under their regime, have taken the view that you cannot even use the word financial advisor because it's too confusing.
Oh, interesting stuff. You talked about these different organizations in Ontario, and John Paul, I have to ask, why isn't there a national standard across the board that's more streamlined? I've never understood this because it just confuses consumers.
Yeah, it's a great question. And there seems to be a disconnect in the sense that, in Ontario, it's been the policy of this government and the regulator to create, for example, a single self regulatory organization. And the justification for doing that is to reduce burden, to simplify the system. And yet, at the same time, they've created a system where we now have four different credentialing bodies issuing eight or nine different credentials. So it doesn't really hang together. I think this would have been much better had there been a national effort to try to create a single standard for either just financial planners or financial planners and financial advisors. But it should have been done at the national level through, for example, the Canadian Insurance Regulators Association working together with the Canadian Securities Administrator group working together. But in this case, Ontario decided to go out alone on this
Yeah.
initiative.
Okay. We only have about 40 seconds left until the end of the show. If regulators aren't protecting consumers, what's one tip that you give consumers to protect themselves?
Really ask questions to understand who you are dealing with. Try to ask questions about their qualifications, what they're licensed to sell you, what they're licensed not to sell you, and really try to understand. That'll help you get a good sense of the scope of the advice you're going to get.
Yeah, good tips there. We really appreciate you coming on. Thanks, Jean Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Jean Paul, Bureau of Fair Canada. Well, that wraps up this episode of Strictly Money. If you have thoughts or questions about today's show, drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay well, stay wise, and stay well.